My uninvited sister crashed my daughter's birthday, wearing a dress like my wedding gown to steal spotlight, so I drew a boundary that shattered her. I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I have a sister named Reagan who's 2 years older than me. Growing up, Reagan lived for the title of first. She was the first to ride a bike, the first to get a phone, the first to wear makeup, the first to have a boyfriend, the first to go to college, and the first to move out. She made sure everyone knew about it. Even when no one asked, she'd bring it up, like she was running some invisible race where only she knew the rules. When I got into the same university as her, just 2 years later for a completely different major, she didn't congratulate me. She didn't even pretend to be happy. Instead, she locked herself in her room at our parents' house the entire weekend and refused to come downstairs. I heard from a mutual friend later that Reagan said I was following her around like a shadow. I let it go. I thought maybe it was just stress, insecurity, or typical older sibling nonsense, but it didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. When I moved out a year after graduating, I found a small, beat-up apartment 5 miles from where she lived. It was cheap, and I was just starting out. She heard about it and told anyone who'd listen that I was trying to recreate her life. When I adopted a black Labrador 2 years after she got her golden retriever, she posted on Facebook something like, "Imitation really is the highest form of flattery," followed by a wink emoji. People started joking about it, but not in a funny way. More like those uncomfortable laughs you give when you don't know if someone's being serious or just mean. It became a pattern. She accused. I ignored. She mocked. I moved on. The breaking point came when I got engaged. My fiancé proposed to me on a weekend trip in the mountains. When I told Reagan in a casual phone call, there wasn't even a pause. Her first response was, "Wow, trying to beat me to the altar." Not congratulations, not even fake excitement, just another jab. That was the last time I gave her a reaction. After that, I started keeping notes. Not online, not on a shared device, just in a plain notebook in my dresser drawer. Every time she accused me of copying her, I'd write it down, the date, what she said, who was there, what led up to it. I didn't confront her. I didn't try to clear things up. I just stopped sharing. No more family group chats, no updates, no social media posts. I stopped tagging anyone. If someone asked me what I was doing, I kept it vague, just working or same old, but behind the scenes I was building my own life without her knowing a single thing about it. I planned a small wedding overseas, not the kind of Instagram spectacle she would have posted about for 6 months in advance. It was just a quiet ceremony in a place my husband and I loved. Only 20 people were invited, none of them Reagan. My parents came and I told them plainly not to tell her where or when it was happening. They didn't argue. Reagan found out after the wedding when she saw our mom's screensaver change to a photo of us standing, barefoot in the sand with matching flower crowns. She told our cousin I was sneaky and trying to one-up her without including her. 6 weeks after that, she got engaged to a guy she met at a New Year's party. It was so fast that even our parents were confused, but Reagan claimed they were soulmates and that they'd known from the beginning. She set the date for exactly 11 months after mine. I didn't care. I'd stopped comparing a long time ago. I had a job I loved, a husband who actually liked being around me, and a home that felt like mine. I didn't decorate it based on Pinterest boards or to impress visitors. I just filled it with things that made me feel calm. I didn't need to announce every move I made to get a reaction out of her. But Reagan wasn't done. She started telling people I was jealous of her, that I rushed into marriage just to beat her, that I copied her down to the details. She even claimed I chose my dog's name because it sounded similar to hers. It was insane. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year at this point. I'd blocked her on everything. Phone, socials, even email. She had no access to my life at all. But somehow, she still managed to make it about herself. Then came the baby race. I found out I was pregnant a few months after our first anniversary. We told our parents privately and asked them not to share it with anyone. They respected that. Reagan found out only when I didn't show up to a family brunch because I was in the first trimester and sick nonstop. 2 weeks later, she announced her own pregnancy on Instagram with a long caption about beating toxic people to the punch and taking back what was copied. At that point, even people who usually took her side started raising eyebrows. My aunt called my mom just to ask if Reagan was okay, but still, I said nothing. I had no interest in turning this into a contest. I just focused on getting things ready for my baby. And that's when I got the idea. If she wanted everyone to compare our lives so badly, maybe it was time they had something real to look at. No accusations, no drama, no speeches, just the truth side by side. Let them look, let them see. Reagan noticed the silence fast. She wasn't used to not being the center of attention, especially mine. For years, she thrived on my reactions. When those stopped, she panicked. Out of nowhere, she sent me a long text talking about how we used to be close and how we should start fresh. I didn't reply. I didn't block her. She was already blocked on everything. But I also didn't open the door again. That window had been closed for a long time. A week later, I got a message from my best friend Fiona with a screenshot. It was a Pinterest board Reagan had created titled Kitchen Dreams. It was an exact copy of one I had made months ago while designing our kitchen renovation. Same layout, same tile pattern, same brass fixtures, even the brand of stove I'd circled in my private notes. I hadn't posted anything about it publicly, so there was no reason she would have seen it unless she had searched my profile when it was still public and recreated it detail by detail. I told Fiona not to say anything, just to save it. We had a folder now, casually labeled Echoes, where she and a couple of close friends dropped screenshots. We didn't talk about it, we just documented. When I was about 5 months pregnant, I created a private message thread for my dad, stepmother, Fiona, and one other close friend to share a few baby updates. I didn't want to make a big deal about anything, but I sent them a picture of our nursery progress and the baby name we'd chosen. Nothing public, nothing forwarded. My stepmother responded with a heart emoji. That was the whole exchange. 3 weeks later, Reagan posted a photo of herself and her fiancé holding a chalkboard sign, "We've decided, baby coming soon." She wasn't pregnant, the caption made that clear, but she made sure to say they had just decided to try and were so excited to start this new chapter. The timing wasn't lost on anyone. That was the moment I went fully offline. I told everyone close to me not to send her anything. No pictures, no casual mentions, no hints. If she wanted to know what I was doing, she'd have to guess, because I wasn't giving her anything else to copy. Then came my baby shower. It was a quiet gathering, just a few close friends at a little tea room near where we lived. I had ordered a maternity dress online, a soft blue wrap style with embroidered flowers near the hem. I had sent a screenshot of it to my best friend while deciding between two options. I never posted it, didn't even leave a review. At the next family dinner, 2 weeks after the shower, Reagan showed up wearing the exact same dress, same fit, same floral embroidery, same shoes I had worn to the shower, down to the brand. Nobody said anything directly, but I watched my dad glance at my stepmother with a confused expression. The table felt tense in a way I'd never seen before. Even Reagan's fiancé seemed uncomfortable. I didn't say a word, just helped myself to dessert, made light conversation, and left early. While I was on maternity leave, I started a small side business, selling handmade nursery decorations. It was just something to keep my hands busy during the long newborn nights. I didn't announce it anywhere except to a few people in a group text. I made little things, mobiles, wall hangings, personalized name signs, and listed them on a quiet Etsy shop under a brand name I hadn't used before. 3 months in, Fiona forwarded me another Instagram post from Reagan. She had launched her own children's decor line. The product photos looked eerily similar to mine. She'd even used a website builder template that matched mine almost exactly. The product names were the same style. She followed the same packaging color scheme I'd chosen. It wasn't just similar, it was mirrored. That time, I documented everything. The website launch date, the domain registration, the original product photos from my phone with timestamps, the Etsy confirmation emails, even the raw files I'd saved while editing. Still, I didn't message her. I didn't make a post. I didn't tell anyone in the family, but the folder labeled Echoes doubled in size. My husband had kept his mouth shut about it for a long time. He wasn't the type to get involved in drama, but after the decor business situation, he sat down next to me at the kitchen table, held up his phone with Reagan's site open, and just said, "She's obsessed with you." I told him I didn't need to fight it, I just needed to keep building quietly. At the next family dinner, I brought a small photo book I had made of our baby's first month. Nothing flashy, just printed pages with captions bound in linen. I passed it to my stepmother, who immediately started flipping through it and tearing up. My dad saw it next, then my uncle, then his wife. People cooed, smiled, laughed at some of the captions. Reagan didn't even try to look at it. Instead, she started talking loudly about her future baby plans, how she was planning to do a monthly photo shoot with professional backdrops, how she had already booked a newborn photographer for next year, and how she was thinking about writing a baby book from the point of view of the baby itself. Nobody asked her to stop. Nobody argued, but nobody matched her energy either. They had already seen what real looked like. My daughter turned 1 in early spring, and we kept it simple. A picnic at a park with close friends, some family, and a few toddlers from our building. We laid out blankets, brought sandwiches, fruit, and a small homemade vanilla sheet cake I had baked the night before. I tied a soft pink ribbon in her hair and printed out a few baby photos to hang from the trees. Nothing extravagant, just warm, happy, and real. Half an hour in, Reagan showed up. No text, no call. She hadn't been invited. She walked straight up to the picnic blanket, wearing a pale blush maxi dress identical in shade and cut to the one I had worn at my wedding. My husband spotted her first, blinked, then looked at me. Fiona glanced at the dress, then at Reagan, then just shook her head. No one said anything, but everyone noticed. Nobody said anything, but everyone saw it. She approached the picnic blanket with that exaggeratedly delicate walk, as if she were stepping onto an improvised runway. For a second, even the wind seemed to stop, just to not ruin the scene she had planned. The dress was practically identical to the one I wore at my wedding. Same light fabric, same discreet blush tone, same fluidity and movement. The difference was that on me, it had been intimate. On Reagan, it was a copy shouted out loud. She gave a forced smile, a high too embellished for someone who hadn't even been invited. My husband looked at me again, just with raised eyebrows. He didn't need to say anything. Fiona squeezed my hand discreetly, and my daughter was playing with dried leaves on the ground, completely oblivious to the theater. "What a cute place," said Reagan, looking around as if she were evaluating the setting of a catalog. I was nearby and decided to stop by. Lie. Nobody just stops by a park closed for private events with named invitations. Nobody appears by chance wearing exactly the dress you wore on one of the most important days of your life. But I didn't fall for it. I just smiled politely and said, "What a coincidence. That dress is quite special to me." She blushed for a moment, pretended she didn't understand. "Really? Oh, I bought it online. It was on sale. Super basic." I didn't respond. I went back to cutting strawberries. I continued preparing small plates for the children. She stood there, looking like someone waiting for a spotlight to turn on, but it didn't come. Nobody invited her to sit. Nobody moved. The silence wasn't uncomfortable for me, but for her, it was unbearable. "Well, I brought a little present," she said, taking out a bag that even matched the dress. Inside was a teddy bear with my daughter's name written wrong, on purpose. "How kind," I replied, picking up the bear with my fingertips and discreetly setting it aside. "She's so beautiful," Reagan said, crouching down to my daughter's height. "It's going to be hard for her not to copy Mommy, right?" The provocation came as a whisper laced with venom, but I already had antibodies. "I hope she'll be free," I replied, looking into her eyes for the first time. For the first time, she blinked before I did. And then I understood. She hadn't come to see my daughter, nor to celebrate anything. She came to invade, to mark territory, to remind me that she was still watching, that she was still trying to compete for something I no longer even disputed. At that moment, as I watched her smiling forcefully, trying to make conversation with people who politely diverted, but with visible discomfort, something inside me clicked into place. I had spent years thinking that ignoring was enough, that I just had to close the curtains of my life and that was it. She would stop looking through the window. But Reagan wasn't just a competitive sister. She was someone who lived in the shadow of her own delusions. And the more silence I gave, the more desperate she became for control. But now it wasn't just about me anymore. Now I had a daughter. And I refused to let my daughter grow up surrounded by this kind of energy. I stood up calmly, went to my husband, and whispered in his ear, "Can we end earlier?" He didn't hesitate. Of course now. We did it as if it were part of the plan. We started packing things up. The party was almost over anyway, but everyone understood. The conversations ended naturally. The guests said goodbye, left sincere kisses and hugs. Fiona came up to me and murmured, "Want me to say something to her?" "No," I said. "She'll understand on her own or not, but I don't take care of that anymore." And with my daughter in my arms and my heart firm, I left the park without drama, without a scene, but with the absolute certainty that this would be the last time Reagan would cross a line without a response. This time, it wouldn't be just silence anymore. Now it would be distance and protection. The party ended early, but what really ended that day was my patience. For years, I prided myself on my self-control, on silence, on letting Reagan shout alone, compete alone, run alone on the track she herself invented. I thought that put me above the game. But that night, as I bathed my daughter and untangled the fine strands of her hair, I realized it wasn't about me anymore. She couldn't yet speak in complete sentences, but she already understood when something was strange. She already noticed the sideways glances, the uncomfortable presences. She deserved to grow up free, and that included being free from the shadow of someone who never accepted seeing me happy on my own. The next day I sat with my husband, and for the first time, I said out loud what I had been avoiding for a long time. I'm not going to ignore it anymore. I'm going to protect what we have with whatever is necessary. I started with the basics, changed old passwords, deleted accounts that were still public, reviewed who had access to my personal email and my old number. I created a new group with only 5 trusted contacts, all informed. Nothing involving my life could leak to Reagan. No photo, no phrase, not even a mention. Fiona helped me with everything. We created a new shared drive to store images of my daughter. Only those who knew why all this was happening had access. But what really disarmed me was what we discovered days later. Reagan had done a photo shoot alone with a fake belly. Yes, a fake pregnant belly. The photos were posted with ambiguous captions like, "The wait may be long, but love is immediate," complete with hashtags like "girl mom" or "new chapter," and Alan Letho's Wafilno. No, she wasn't pregnant. She wasn't even trying anymore. She was imitating a pregnancy. Fiona sent me the images in the middle of the night. I was already asleep. I woke up with the notification, and I confess that for a second I just stared at the screen, trying to understand if it was real. It was. And at that moment, I knew that what I was facing wasn't just sister rivalry. It was obsession. Something that can't be fixed with empathy or silence. Something that needs limits, firmness, and real distance. The next morning, I went to my parents' house. I asked to talk, just the 3 of us. I looked them in the eyes and said with all the calm I could gather, "Either you respect my boundaries, or you won't participate in my life anymore." My mother cried. My father tried to justify. They talked about the love between sisters, the phases, how Reagan always had this difficult temperament. But I wasn't there to hear explanations. I was there to establish a boundary. She invaded your granddaughter's birthday with a wedding dress. She took fake pregnancy photos without being pregnant. This isn't sister stuff anymore. This is unbalanced. And if I don't put an end to this now, the next to suffer will be my daughter. My father went silent. My mother, still crying, just nodded. "I'm not asking you to cut ties with her," I said. "But if she asks something about me, about my daughter, about where we are, what we do, you have 2 options. Lie or refuse to answer. Any other attitude will force me to distance myself from you too." For the first time, I felt they heard me, not as a daughter, but as a woman, as a mother, and as someone who, after years of patience, finally decided to put herself first. I left their house feeling lighter, not because the problem was solved, but because for the first time, it was named and delimited. And from there, everything would change, not for Reagan, but for me. After that conversation with my parents, I spent days with a strange calmness. The calm that comes not when everything is resolved, but when you finally stop pretending you don't see the problem. I knew Reagan wouldn't stop. People like her don't accept limits, especially ones they didn't impose. But now, for the first time, I was prepared, and she wasn't. The first attempt was subtle. I was at the cafe where I usually work on lighter days, a quiet environment with small tables on the sidewalk, the sound of dishes mixed with the sound of leaves swaying. I had already warned the few friends who used the same space, if she appears, don't talk to me, don't give her an opening. The order now was to protect, not react. And there she was. She entered with the same theatrically soft steps, bag hanging on the side, hair done as if she were going to a TV interview. She sat 3 tables behind, ordered something just to be part of it, and kept watching me discreetly, of course, but I know the way. I didn't get up, didn't speak, didn't look. I continued typing as if she were just another shadow on that sunny morning. She stayed there for 23 minutes, then left. Fiona, who was 2 tables away, sent just one message, first attempt documented. 2 days later, she appeared at a craft fair. I had a small stand selling pieces from my business. The one she tried to blatantly copy with the same website template, the same packaging, and even the names of the products. She didn't talk to me, didn't buy anything, but she kept walking through the parallel corridors, always stopping within sight of my stand with a clipboard, taking photos with her phone in a casual way. My husband, who was with me, approached, held my hand, and murmured, "If she steps inside the stand, I'll break composure. She won't. She just wants to be noticed." And once again, I didn't give her that. We took photos with real customers, handed out cards, and Fiona, from the other side of the pavilion, photographed her with time, date, and face, complete record. After that, she tried the indirect route. A message delivered by a cousin. She asked if she could see you to talk. I said no. A message delivered by an ex-friend. Reagan wants to apologize, but she's ashamed. She says she just needs one chance. I replied, she had 30 years. Gradually, people began to notice, not just her discomfort with my silence, but the imbalance. "Did you see what she posted yesterday?" A college colleague asked me. "No, a video with the caption, 'Silence is also a form of violence.' Think it was for you. I don't know, I don't care." Another friend commented, "Funny how she's always talking about her envious sister and never shows a picture of you two together. It seems the envious sister only exists in her head." And gradually, the audience emptied. The jokes lost their humor. The posts became noise. The indirect comments no longer had an echo. Because for a spectacle to exist, you need an audience. And Reagan, for the first time, was acting alone on stage, without an audience, without applause, just with her own obsession echoing off the empty walls. And me? I watched it all with a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness, seeing what she had become. Relief, knowing that I had finally left the game. It wasn't escape, it was clarity. And with each new step she took, trying to force her presence in my life, I understood more. The problem was never me imitating Reagan. The problem was always that she didn't know how to be someone without imitating me. Sometimes the recognition we expect for years comes from where we least expect it, and when it arrives, it doesn't bring euphoria or revenge. It brings a different kind of silence, a silence of relief. It happened at a Sunday lunch, one of those family gatherings I used to avoid but decided to attend after much insistence from my stepmother. Reagan, according to my mother, wouldn't come because she was emotionally tired, the old excuse she always used when she wanted attention without effort. I went, not out of curiosity. I went because, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of her presence or absence. I was whole. I arrived with my daughter in my arms, my husband by my side, and a simple orange cake in my hand. No production, no announcement, no performance. It was only when my uncle approached, pulled up a chair beside me, and said quietly, "Can I tell you something?" that I felt something was different. He placed his interlaced hands on the table and without beating around the bush said, "I never realized how hard Reagan was on you, but now we understand." I stayed quiet, waiting. We laughed at the things she said, thought it was exaggeration, sister's mischief, but seeing everything that happened, everything she's been doing, it's as if someone had removed a blindfold from our eyes. He paused. "She copies you, stalks you, and still tries to invert everything to seem like the victim. I feel terrible for not having seen it before." I nodded, but didn't respond immediately, because it wasn't the first time someone had told me this in recent weeks. A cousin sent me a message after seeing Reagan's fake pregnancy photo shoot. A colleague of my father's commented that he found the whole situation disturbing, and even my grandmother, at breakfast the day before, looked at me with teary eyes and murmured, "What she does to you, it's not from God, my child." But hearing that face-to-face at that simple lunch caught me off guard. Because for so many years, all I wanted was to be believed, to be defended, to be seen. And now that I was finally being seen, I just felt tired. Not grateful, not vindicated, just exhausted. "Thank you for saying that," I murmured to my uncle. "Really? But I don't want my life to be a response to what she does anymore. Not for better, not for worse." He nodded with a guilty look and then said, "You're right. And no matter how much she still tries, we see who you are, and that changes everything." I smiled, a smile without teeth, but sincere. After lunch, I went to the backyard, sat in the hammock with my daughter sleeping on my chest, and watched the trees swaying slowly. And for the first time, I thought out loud, why do I still let this hurt? The answer came on its own, because even when freeing yourself, some wounds take time to heal. It was no longer about Reagan being in my life. She wasn't anymore. But the damage from years of being disbelieved, ridiculed, mocked doesn't disappear just because people understood. I still find myself doubting myself when I like the same colors she liked. I still hesitate before buying something that might remind me of an idea she already used. I still feel tainted when someone compliments something that somehow might seem similar to her style. And that's what hurts the most, because it's not enough to cut the bond. The chain still leaves a mark on the wrist, and if we don't take care, it becomes guilt that doesn't belong to us. But there, with my daughter breathing deeply in my lap, with the smell of grass and cake in the air, I decided I will heal. Not to prove anything, but so my daughter never grows up thinking that loving someone means chasing approval. From then on, I started writing again, not in a hidden notebook like before, but for myself, for my story. To give back to myself the parts that Reagan tried to swallow. And when I got up from that hammock, I knew the next step wasn't to distance Reagan. The next step was to get closer to myself. My daughter was almost 2 years old when she pointed to an old photo and asked, with that curious and innocent way that only a child has, "Mommy, who's that lady from the strange party?" The photo was one of the few that remained of me still pregnant. I was smiling, wearing that light blue dress, surrounded by friends at my baby shower. And there, in a corner of the image, barely framed, appeared Reagan. Face turned to the side, harsh expression, and the same dress, copied, sewn with provocation. I swallowed hard. I looked at my daughter and for the first time allowed myself to answer without bitterness. That lady was someone who wanted very much to appear in the photos, even when the party wasn't hers. She widened her little eyes, confused. "Why?" I smiled calmly. "Because sometimes, sweetie, there are people who haven't yet learned to shine on their own. And when that happens, they try to take others' shine as if it were theirs, like taking a toy without asking." "Exactly like that," she thought for a second, then changed the subject as only children can. But I stayed there, holding the image in my hands, thinking about how many versions of the story I carried in silence. How many times I preferred to disappear from photos just to avoid confrontation. How many times I gave up speaking to not seem bitter, to not be the sister who complains. But my daughter was growing up, and with her, my responsibility grew not to pass on what I had swallowed my entire life. The legacy I wanted to leave her wasn't made of beautiful dresses or walls decorated with good taste. It was made of examples, of dignity, of boundaries, of truth. The following week, I set aside time for myself. I took everything that was in that folder called Echoes, the screenshots, the prints, the records, and I deleted them one by one, without anger, without rush. Not because I had forgotten what she did, but because I was no longer that person. Reagan stayed in the past, stuck in her repetitions, in the cycle she created and never managed to break. I did not. I was creating something new, my own line, my own rituals, my rhythm, my peace. And now, when my daughter calls me to play, when she chooses her own clothes, when she shows me the drawing made just by her, I don't just see a child. I see freedom, freedom that I needed to conquer with silence, pain, and firmness. And I know she will grow up hearing, "You can be whoever you want. You don't need to compete with anyone. You're not here to please those who want to be you. You're here to be happy in your own way." In the end, Reagan tried to erase me by copying everything I did, but what she never understood is that my strength was never in things, nor in events, nor in clothes, nor in photos. My strength was always in not needing anyone's approval to exist, and now every time I look at my daughter running barefoot in the yard, with her hair tied in the crooked way she did herself, I know I broke the cycle, and if there's one thing I leave for her as an inheritance, it's this: the freedom to not live as anyone's shadow. 1 year later, we're not perfect, just honest. That's the end of my story. Now I want to ask you, in the end, am I the asshole? Or not?